up.
Mr. Chairman, you're live on YouTube.
Thank you, Amanda. So everyone, welcome to House Transportation Highways Military Affairs Committee. We'll be considering two bills today. House Bill 144, electric vehicle fee updates, and House Bill 186, automated traffic law enforcement prohibition. I apologize to those people here that the committee's eating in front of you, but this is probably the only chance we'll get to actually have lunch. So except for Representative Brown, he has to present, so he doesn't get to eat either. So please remember, speak through the chair. Decorum is important. And with that, Representative Brown, why don't you tell us about your bill? 144.
This committee
Roll
looks
call.
a lot
Whoa,
more.
wait.
Oh, roll call.
Roll call. Diane, please.
Okay. Representative Baker,
Here.
Representative Brown,
Here.
Representative Burt,
Here.
Representative Henderson,
Here.
Representative McGuire,
Here.
Representative Obermuller, Representative O'Hearn,
Here.
Representative Stivar,
Present.
Chairman Burkhart.
Here. Okay. With that, Representative, why don't you take us through your bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, no ladies up here, so just gentlemen. I bring you House Bill 144, and really what this is an update to a bill that we passed in 2019 for the electric vehicle fee. Those that were here may remember we took our electric vehicle fee from $50 to $200, and what that was ultimately trying to do was get the people that are driving their electric vehicles on our roads to pay their share for the roads that they're using, such as fuel tax. When we don't collect a fuel tax for them, this was dumping that same amount of money into that. Kind of the law of unintended consequences happened here when I had a constituent call me this summer that he lives half the time here and half the time down in Arizona, and he transports a golf cart back and forth, and that's how he gets around both of his little retirement communities that he lives in here within the state. And he licenses that golf cart. Well, up until this past year, he had licensed it and never had any issues with it. But all of a sudden, the county treasurer this year noticed that his vehicle plugs in. And the way that the statute reads is any plug-in electric vehicle should be charged the $200 electric vehicle fee. And let me tell you, I got an earful, and I agree with him. I don't think a golf cart is really what the intention was trying to get to with the electric vehicle fee that we raised to $200. In the process of working this bill, I also was notified that Representative Yin was working on a very similar bill to try to exclude motorcycles. Again, they're not the ones doing the harm to the roads at this point. We're looking at the vehicles that weigh a lot of weight or have a lot of weight to them, such as the Teslas or any of the other vehicles that are out there that have heavier weight and they're not paying their fuel taxes. So I incorporated the motorcycle into this, and that's exactly what this bill does, Mr. Chairman. If you switch over to page 2, that's really the meat of the bill. When you look at page 2, it just has the new language that says on line 7 there, a motorcycle is defined in Wyoming Statute 31101, and then a multi-purpose vehicle is defined in Wyoming Statute 31101. And I can go through those if the committee would like, but ultimately what those two are is just the multi-purpose vehicle definition. And inside of that, it does have motor power or electric powered vehicles and golf carts. So that basically helps out with those. And then as well as the motorcycle also does, and this was something that the chairman had asked me to look into, and it does talk about electric bicycles as well. And this was some discussion that came up 2 years ago as well with the passage of an electric bicycle law that we have. Since they are able to be licensed, this would not include those. So this would exclude those as well. Mr. Chairman, I'll stand for any questions.
Okay, committee, questions for the representative? Representative McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I did not want to work on your bill without talking to you about it, and this is the first chance, but I would invite you to continue to think about the motorcycle exception. And the reason being is I'm a motorcycle rider. The condition of the roads is extraordinarily important to the motorcycles. And also, interestingly enough, motorcycles don't get that much better gas mileage than automobiles do. Now, the average motorcycles, a highway bike, you're looking at 30 plus, maybe 40 miles per gallon. That's not that much different than a small foreign-made compact car. And, I think it's important for motorcycle riders to have well-maintained roads. Just a comment, I agree completely. The guy who's driving his golf cart from the course to his house that's 6 blocks away, that's a whole different kettle of fish. But people who are riding their motorcycles on the highways and things, I think that it's appropriate for them to pay. So, thank you.
Okay. Other questions for Representative? Any other questions? Representative Burke?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Brown, for bringing this. I too ride motorcycle. A little bit of a pushback on that. I do like the idea of keeping the motorcycle into this into this bill. They do. I don't see where they have that much of an impact on the roads. The other vehicles that I do drive, I believe that the taxes I do pay for that will cover the cost of the damage that my motorcycle does do, which is I don't think is very limited. So I did co-sponsor this one. I would strongly support to keep the motorcycles.
Representative, is there a question in there?
I just want to support it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Representative O'Hearn? No?
Mr. Chairman, if I can just give a quick response.
Yes, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Representative McGuire, I tend to agree with you in the thoughts that, back when I started riding a motorcycle, it was nice to have that motorcycle because it did get 2 to 3 times the amount of gas mileage. And now these days things are changing. The difference comes in how last year, our 2019 House Bill 166, how that formulation came up. And that was looking at the average daily driver across the state. And I did think about reducing and having an electric vehicle fee for motorcycles in particular. The problem that you have with that is you have a very shortened amount of time frame that most motorcycles are being ridden. I can say that I've seen Representative Burt in the middle of March driving his motorcycle over here. I'd say that's probably a rarity. And also the amount of time that they spend on the roads, as well as the weight on the roads, tends to be less of an impact than what the motor vehicles that we're talking about with the original intent of the bill was. So I do think it's something that will continue to be seen in the future. I think when we start seeing more of these electric vehicle fees coming up and less of the fuel tax being paid, we're certainly going to need to be looking at maybe an electric tax on, there's a lot of technology coming up, but as it stands right now, I didn't really have a finite way to define how much we should be charging motorcycles. Just there's too many variables with it. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you bringing the bill. Do you have any information, please, Mr. Chairman, on, the number? I've seen the fiscal note, but what's the projected number, if you will? Comparing, like you said, the core reason for the earlier bill. How many owners do we have of that now? And could you get that if you don't have it?
Mr. Chairman,
Representative Brown.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Henderson, can you rephrase your question?
Well, there's a finite amount of.
Representative?
Yes, sir.
Henderson.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Mr. Chairman, there's a finite amount of people in the state that have these vehicles. I'm just curious, what's that look like? A couple of years ago, it was like in the 30s or 40s. And so in terms of, the real core piece of it, but how many motorcycles are affected?
Representative Brown.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Henderson, as you stated, the Wyoming Department of Transportation actually has that information, has provided that on the fiscal note. And I did check with anybody else, including our county treasurer, if they have anything additional. And there is no further additional vehicles licensed at this point that this would affect. So the fiscal note would be a reduction of about $2,800 over the course of the year. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other questions? Okay, with that, we'll go to public comment. Do we have any other legislators here? Representative Andrew, did you wish to speak on this bill? Okay. Any other legislators? Anyone from agency or the governor's office? Okay,
Mr.
Amanda.
Chairman,
Yes, Amanda.
we have YDOT here, Director Reiner and Mr. Rossetti.
All right, please admit them. Director Reiner.
Members of the committee, Luke Reiner. Director of YDOT. Mr. Chairman, we would just basically stand and say, at this point, we would have no pushback on this bill. I would concur with the points made by the good representative from Natrona County in terms of, as we go forward, we do have to have the discussion about how we fund roads relative to electric vehicles, because it will become more and more an issue. And it'll be a philosophical discussion: is it damage or access, or a combination of both, that really, as we walk through who pays what. Mr. Chairman, I'd just say that if there's some questions for YDOT, Mr. Rossetti and I are here and available.
All right, thank you. Anyone in the audience wish to speak on this bill? Okay, seeing no one. Amanda, anyone else in the waiting room on this bill?
Mr. Chairman, no one in the waiting room has their hand raised at the moment.
Thank you. Okay, with that then, I will close public testimony. Committee? Moved by Burt. Second by Stiver. Discussion? Okay. Question being called. Please take the roll, Diana.
Representative Baker,
Aye.
Representative Brown,
Aye.
Representative Burt,
Aye.
Representative Henderson,
Aye.
Representative McGuire,
Aye.
Representative Obermueller,
Aye.
Representative O'Hearn,
Aye.
Representative Stivar,
Aye.
Chairman Burkhart.
Aye. So that's a unanimous vote.
Yes.
Representative Brown, I'll have to refer this to appropriations because of the money involved, the full $2,800 reduction.
Fine, Mr. Chairman.
Just wanted you to know. But it is a reduction in revenue. Okay. We can both go. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Diane. Okay. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 186. Representative Andrew. Welcome to House Transportation. I think this is the first time you've been in front of us. And we are as mean as we look.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Please present your bill.
All right, thank you. House Bill 186 does a couple of things. If you look at Section 1, it bans the use of automated traffic enforcement systems in Wyoming. It does not prevent law enforcement officers from using assistance devices such as body cameras or dash cams. And it also prevents governments in Wyoming from providing information to other states that would be used to impose fines applied by automated traffic enforcement systems. Section 2 defines automated traffic enforcement system as, or it means a red light camera, a speed camera, or any device used to detect a violation of a state traffic law under Title 31 of the Wyoming statutes without requiring law enforcement officer to be present to witness the violation, which results in a notice of the violation being delivered to the registered owner of the vehicle. Section 3 prevents the state of Wyoming from entering into compacts and contracts that require giving out information for the purpose of collecting a fine resulting from an automated traffic enforcement system. I brought this for a couple of reasons. I heard a lot of concerns from people in Wyoming that this could possibly, become part of their lives. And I think the first reason not to have these cameras is that they're not effective. There's dozens of studies over 20 years showing that they actually, by various universities and government, showing that they actually increase the amount of accidents in two ways. One is that they interrupt the natural flow of traffic and cause people to stop short at stoplights and cause rear-end accidents. But there are also a significant number of municipalities that have been caught shortening their yellow light times in order to increase the amount of violations they can collect on. And that causes an increase in T-bone style collisions as well. The more important thing here is that they've been ruled unconstitutional by both many state and federal courts. And to elaborate on that, a Fourth Amendment violation occurs when every single license plate of the registered vehicle owner of every single vehicle passing by the camera is scanned by automatic license plate recognition technology and kept in a database. It is an illegal search of extremely sensitive information, which includes the registered owner's physical address and social security number. Information about their payment history on anything ranging from vehicle insurance to court fines and child support are also data mined by the cameras. The data is run through a law enforcement database to look for matches to their person of interest program. This information is then shared with the municipality in which it was obtained. A police officer would have to prove probable cause to conduct this kind of search, yet every single vehicle owner, regardless of the speed or position of their car in the intersection during green, yellow, or red phases, has this illegal search conducted by the camera.
Representative, quick question, hate to interrupt you, but you said this is a Fourth Amendment issue. Are you reading from a policy paper or from a court decision? Where are you getting your information?
Right now, I'm just reading from what I compiled from various policy papers. And
so it's your opinion it's a Fourth Amendment
my
violation?
Opinion, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Please continue.
Thank you. In regards to the Fifth, Sixth, and Seventh Amendments, violations of these three amendments occur every time a photo ticket is issued. When the contracts between the camera vendor and the cities and towns are signed, the vendor is given authority to ask the registered owners of the vehicles cited in the violation to forfeit their constitutional rights. Then, if a vehicle owner chooses to argue the matter before a judge, the only person available for them to cross-examine is an employee of a private company. Arguments about the accuracy of the equipment used to detect the violation are not admissible. It's actually been made impossible to argue a photo tickets on constitutional grounds in some states because courts have been allowed to lower the burden of proof required to convict down to a preponderance of evidence. This, in layman's terms, amounts to a hunch that the vehicle owner may be guilty. Photo ticketing proponents have an innocent hope that an innocent vehicle owner doesn't put up a stink when someone else was driving the vehicle registered to them and just pays the fine. The owner often feels compelled by the language of the citation to simply pay up to avoid having their license suspended or ultimately get their vehicle seized based on an alleged violation, which did not involve them at all. The way these citations are issued and handled by the courts do not constitute any sort of due process, right of trial, or right to face one's accuser. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Questions for the representative? Okay, Representative Stiver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The state to our south has toll roads. Farther east got toll roads. Will this affect them paying for them, the toll roads usage? With
Representative,
the one thing in there where they can't get information back and forth.
Representative, please.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Stivar, this would not affect other states from collecting fees for toll roads because this only applies to automatic violations.
But committee, I do have a follow-up, if you don't mind, to Representative Stiver's question. So Representative, while it still allows for the collection of fees, if you don't pay those fees, you're now liable for a traffic citation and they can go after you for that. How does that, based on the fact that the cameras have taken a photograph of your license plate, how would you address that issue? Kind of related to what Representative Stiver said, they can use it while they use it to collect money. They can also use it to prosecute a violation.
Mr. Chairman, I think the idea is if that the information is being collected in the context of processing a violation, it will not be given to them, so they will not know who has done it.
Representative, however, they've already sent the notification for a bill. And if the individual doesn't pay the bill, they're now subject to prosecution in another state. And I look at this as potentially saying that in Wyoming, they're immune to that versus going to another state where they are not. How do you address that conflict?
Mr. Chairman, they could not have sent the notification because what this is preventing them from getting is their information, including their address. All they have is a license plate. Wyoming would not be able to release further information.
Hold on, Representative Stiver, please. Representative, but they have already sent a bill which has the person's name, the owner of the vehicle, the license plate number, their address, and everything else based on a camera photograph of the license plate. They already have that information that then can be used to follow up with a citation.
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
This would prevent them from accessing that information in the first place.
Mr. Chairman,
Representative Stiver, go ahead, please.
that's just like the state to the south. You can get they've done away with it. You can get it, but you can drive on that toll road down there with not the pass, and they just take a picture of your license plate. And then that state sends that license plate number to this state so they can send the bill. How is that going to affect? You know, are we going to have everybody down there with Wyoming plates driving on that toll road or the one in the Lone Star State with Wyoming plates that with no tag, and they're just taking pictures of license plates? How's that going to work?
Representative Andrew.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Stivar, it only prevents the release of information in the event of a violation being charged to that vehicle, and not in the instance of collecting a toll, because a toll is not a violation. So if they're just collecting a fee, they are not prevented from accessing that information.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Follow, Representative.
But just like the good chairman said, you've given them information. You don't pay your bill, they can come back as a moving violation.
Representative Andrew.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Stivar, I don't believe that is the same type of violation because that violation is because they didn't pay a fee, not for something they did when they were driving a motor vehicle.
Okay, okay, you're fine, Representative. Okay. Representative Henderson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's a lot of good information, Representative. I appreciate it, but I'd like to get a little bit more information on the enforcement aspect of this. Have you got anything to give to us relative to the bill in preparation of your proposal, interacting with the law enforcement entities around the state? You know, what's the impact if we enact this on their job? Thank you.
Representative Andrew?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Henderson, if the bill is moved, there is a representative from the Association of Police Chiefs and Sheriffs coming to speak, coming to testify in support of the bill and to speak about that exact subject. And if it would be all right, I think it would be great to wait for that testimony.
All right. Representative Byrd, I think you had a question also.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm trying to, as the information comes out, I'm trying to reevaluate where my thought process was. So a couple different of questions, please. So I looked into another similar bill that we were looking at. Have you contacted, like, I guess it does go off of Representative Henderson's comment. I guess I'm not really sure how the difference is between an automated camera collecting information versus an LEO, a law enforcement's dash cam collecting the same type of information. Can you explain to me how the difference is? Because my understanding is, even though this would prevent automated cameras, it does not prevent law enforcement agencies from using dash cameras, correct?
Representative Andrew?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Burt, yes, it does treat those differently. The automated cameras constantly scan traffic and they can send out violations by mail automatically without the involvement of a police officer. The assistance devices such as body cams and dash cams are only there to assist the officer in collecting evidence on a violation that he has personally witnessed.
Representative Byrd?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Representative Andrews, so if a vehicle is driving down the road and an automated camera just picks up the license, does it automatically scan that particular license for any violations, or does the vehicle have to perform an illegal act such as driving through a red light or speeding?
Representative Andrew?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Burt, the cameras are always on and they are always scanning license plates, regardless of whether a violation has occurred.
Representative Burt, follow up.
So does there have to be somebody on the other side of the camera collecting the data in order to run the plate to find out if there's been a, I think one of your examples was, and correct me if I'm wrong, that missed child support or something like, or something that gets put in the system that the data research, and what this bill would prevent would be restricted from being shared to other agencies. So how does the system know if that license plate or the owner of that license plate has a violation out there? I guess if we're trying to prevent the data from being shared, how does the system know that the owner license plate has another violation somewhere, or the data that you're trying to prevent from being shared? I don't know if I was able to
Representative
phrase
Andrew?
that quite.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Burt, they are given that information to compile into their databases by government agencies.
Representative Burt?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, for the questions. So to revert back to a law enforcement officer that might be doing a patrol and just a random check of a license plate, how would that be different than an automated camera that just captures the data of a vehicle just driving down the road? Is there any real difference on a patrol officer just going down the road and just happens to do a random check on a license plate and catches a violation because the vehicle could just be parked there versus the vehicle being traveled down the road and getting the same data collected from a traffic camera. I'm not
Representative
sure there's a
Andrew?
difference.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Burt, the difference is that there is a human witness present when the police officer is there to be able to go to court and testify against the person who is accused.
Representative Burt.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. So if the vehicle is moved and there's nobody in the vehicle parked on the side of the street and there's nobody in there, what would the law enforcement officer be witnessing versus a random check of a random license plate because they may have a slow day? And I don't know, I'm just on the random side of it, if there's nobody in the vehicle and the vehicle's not moving, there would be no violation that a law enforcement officer would have witnessed. They just do a random check of a license plate to find out if the registration's current or those kinds of measures. I guess I'm not, without anybody in the vehicle, there wouldn't have been an incident for the officer to, I guess, stop. What would stop the law enforcement officer from being able to do a random check of a license plate in relation to a automated camera just doing a random check as a vehicle's going by?
Representative?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Burt, I could be wrong, but it's not my understanding that officers go around and randomly check license plates. I think it's usually in correspondence with something they notice, such as expired tabs.
Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Andrew, I'm going to follow up just a little bit in some of the discussion that's been had previous to this, and it goes into sections, basically into section 3 here. The way I read this, it says neither the state of Wyoming nor any agency instrumentality or political subdivision thereof shall provide information used to impose or collect a civil or criminal fine that results from a violation captured by an automatic traffic enforcement system as defined by Wyoming statute. Okay. That particular language, from what I'm understanding, is attempting to prohibit, let's use the state of Illinois, where we probably have an interstate compact with them on any type of a red light system, or perhaps the state of Colorado, where I was busted for running a red light. Okay. It attempts to me to say the state of Wyoming's laws are going to prohibit the use or the transmission of our data, of our citizens' data and our license plates from being transmitted underneath an interstate compact back to another state. Is that what I'm understanding you're attempting to do with this?
Representative Andrew?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Brown, that is the intent, but this deals more with future compacts. Anything entered into prior to July 1st, 2021, I believe, if we're already in that compact, that would still be upheld.
Mr. Chairman, follow up?
Please.
Representative Andrews, so I guess what would any state have any benefit in joining into any type of a compact with us then when it comes to interstate travel or interstate commerce? When we actually have these types of contracts across the board for a reason, which typically involves much more than just you and I driving across the state, but it has a lot to do with DOT practices with large trucks, anything like that going across. What benefit would Wyoming have in entering into something like this with these types of interstate compacts in the future? Why would a state want to stay with Wyoming?
Representative?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Brown, the benefit of this is that the state of Wyoming can help protect the constitutional rights of its citizens, and we won't violate them just because there is a convenient agreement with another state.
Mr. Chairman, one last follow-up.
Representative Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I guess I see that. I like the idea of being able to protect our citizens because ultimately we're not going to put up red light cameras here. I don't think that's, it's been discussed in the past in this body, but I am slightly concerned that these types of compacts they're not just you can strike this one sentence and then we're all good. These compacts are compacts for a reason because it's the same language across the board. And so my concern with this is if we have these compacts in place, probably not going to be negotiating these compacts anytime in the future. So what good is this bill ultimately doing if we've already got these compacts in place?
Representative Andrew?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Brown, I think the point of it is to just in the event that we do enter into more of these compacts, that they are written with the rights of Wyomingites in mind.
Representative Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Andrew, how much, or if any, did you speak with YDOT in regards to the types of compacts that we have with other states? Do you have any of that information?
Representative Andrew?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Brown, I do not.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Representative McGuire?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you've been talking quite a bit about constitutional rights, and I'm just curious. When you ask the state of Wyoming for permission to drive on the streets of the highways of the state of Wyoming, and you ask permission for a license for your vehicle, what constitutional right do you have to privacy for that license plate on the front of your car or the rear of your car?
Representative?
Mr. Chairman, Representative McGuire, the license plate itself, I don't have a right to privacy in regards to people seeing the license plate number. But further information beyond that, I believe that we do.
And is there
Representative?
oh, excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there any kind of a Supreme Court case that indicates that there is any constitutional right to privacy with regard to your vehicle or the license plate on your vehicle or your driver's license?
Representative?
Mr. Chairman, Representative McGuire, I do not believe that a case has gone as far as the Supreme Court relating to this type of information.
Follow-up.
Representative McGuire?
You also talked about the fact, or excuse me, you alluded that it was factual that in areas where there was a camera type of enforcement, that it was actually less safe. Can you point us to or provide any kind of a study? And by that, I mean a study that has been endorsed by the National Highway Traffic Safety or some group with some credibility. Can you provide us with a study that shows that it actually decreases safety when when areas are patrolled or there's some kind of a camera safety setup?
Representative?
Mr. Chairman, Representative McGuire, I do not have that at my fingertips right now, but I can provide that to you.
One more
Later
follow-up.
Representative McGuire, continue.
So we have an issue with our budget right now. And right now, I'm sure that you've probably noticed in rural areas, especially on the highway between the center of the state and Gillette, there are a lot of automated traffic systems that are being set up where there's construction. So they're putting up a traffic light, and then they are moving the traffic into an opposite lane, and it moves forward, and that traffic light just works just like a regular traffic light, red, green, yellow, and then there's a light on the other side. Now, there are issues with people running those lights, and there are proposals in order to protect the people who are working in that construction area to put up some photographic traffic safety. I don't want to use the wrong word, but anyway, they don't have enough highway patrolmen to go and to sit at every construction area and monitor who is running these or who's going too fast in a construction area or maybe not obeying a flag person. Would you propose that by passing this bill that we don't do anything about that, that in the future going forward, that the state of Wyoming, if we don't have a law enforcement official there, should we shut down the construction area until there's a law enforcement person available to go and monitor that for safety?
Representative?
Mr. Chairman, Representative McGuire, those construction crews are certainly able to report the violation, and they're certainly allowed to film the incident to collect evidence. If it involves automated ticketing, it would be a violation of this proposed bill. But if it does not include automated ticketing and all they're doing is turning in video evidence to a law enforcement agency, then it would not be prohibited.
Representative Burton, question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Going back on the constitutionality of that point, Representative Andrew, does the Constitution limit the power of the people or limit the power does it limit the rights of the people or limit the rights of the government?
Representative?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Byrd, it limits the power of government,
That is correct.
in my opinion.
So sorry.
Representative?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we continue to increase the amount of automated surveillance we have across the state, what is the constitutionality of the role of a constant surveillance state, which would, wherever we go, we'd just constantly be monitored?
Representative Andrew?
Chairman, Representative Burt, I would hope we never get into that situation, and I do not believe that would be constitutional.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Andrew, quick question for you. Going back to section 1 on page 2, and it just talks about nothing prevents a law enforcement officer from using photographic or other enforcement assistance for the purpose of personally detecting a violation. So am I understanding you correctly when you say a camera can take a picture of me at the red light? That picture can then be forwarded to a law enforcement officer. That law enforcement officer can look at the time, the date, everything on there, determine, yep, in fact, this person violated a law. And then personally, as a law enforcement officer, request the information of that license plate and get it back from a person. You're just saying it cannot automatically do it. Is that correct?
Representative?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Brown, correct. The camera cannot be the device sending out the ticket. If there was video evidence of something and that video evidence was presented properly in court, then I believe that would still be permissible.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other questions? Any other questions? So Representative Andrew, I have a final one, I think. And I'm on page 3, line 12. It says delivered to the registered owner of a vehicle. I don't think the vehicle itself commits a violation. I think it's the driver. So how do you differentiate? You send a ticket to the registered owner or the driver?
Mr. Chairman, that is exactly one of the issues I am trying to address with this bill, is that when automated traffic enforcement systems are used, the ticket is sent to the registered owner of the vehicle. And the burden of proof of who was driving that vehicle is put on the registered owner. So instead of innocent until proven guilty, the burden of proving that you weren't driving the vehicle is on the owner.
Okay. Other questions? Any other questions? Okay. Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Representative Andrew, you just mentioned something there, and a piece that's kind of near and dear to my heart. You put up here underneath the school bus video systems, and you just mentioned it, something that I worked very hard with Senator Ellis on, and the term of rebuttable presumption. So you're saying at this point that the person would have basically the state would have no way to enter into a rebuttable presumption situation. Is that correct? With identification of a car?
Representative?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Brown, it prevents the owner of the vehicle from having to prove that they were not driving the vehicle. the state has to prove that someone is guilty.
So, seeing no other questions, open it for public comment. Amanda, how many people do we have in the waiting room to speak on this?
Mr. Chairman, currently we have 3 individuals in the waiting room with their hand raised. However, I do have YDOT in the room.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to check. And for the people here in person in the audience, how many of you wish to speak on this? Would you raise your hand, please? So I have 3. All right, I have to be conscious of the time. We go back in at 2 o'clock and I want to make sure everyone has the opportunity to speak. So with that, are there any other elected officials who wish to speak on the bill? Representative Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to come here and give my support for the bill. I just think this is a slippery slope, and here's an opportunity for us to put up a roadblock in our state to where we're not going to make this a fundraising effort. And that's just exactly what I feel this is, especially if we're contracting outside companies to send the ticket out and process the ticket, that type of thing. I think there's been plenty of testimony on the issue of owner versus driver. So I just wanted to share my support for the bill.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Representative Bear? Okay, thank you, Representative. Any elected officials remotely?
Mr. Chairman, not that I can see, we do have a telephone number. I don't know if they can rename, so I know who that is, but I can allow them to talk and we can see who it is, but.
Not quite yet, Amanda. So with that, any agencies? I know that YDOT is in the waiting room. Any other agencies, Amanda? Or any agencies here? Okay, Amanda, why don't you admit YDOT? Please. Okay. Director Reiner, I can see you're here. Do you have anybody with you?
Mr. Chairman, I do. I have Mr. Gillette, Colonel Haller, and also Mr. Rossetti.
Okay. Amanda, go ahead and admit all the YDOT staff, please.
Mr. Chairman, they're all in the room, so
Oh.
they can turn their video on if they wish to speak.
Okay, thank you. All right, Director Reiner, please proceed.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, Luke Reiner, Director of YDOT. Mr. Chairman, I'll keep my comments short based on the time that we have available, maybe to address some of the issues that have come up. Certainly the representative from Natrona County talked about some of the potential uses for automated vehicle identification systems in the state of Wyoming. And I'll take it from that approach, which for me boils down to one word, which is safety. And for me, the potential use of an automated vehicle identification system is the right tool at the right place at the right time. All tools can be good, all tools can be bad. And that's typically my approach to things in life. You know, you can hit a nail with a hammer, or you can hit somebody in the head with it. And so it's the use of the tool that matters to me. In our experience over the last several years since the bill passed concerning our school buses, the automatic traffic enforcement tools have been an effective tool to help enforce the rules surrounding bus drivers and school buses when they have the arm out. But you know, it cost us the life of a young lady to get there. And we made that rule after a death. And as we look at how to keep our roads safe, I'm certainly interested in the potential to use an automatic traffic enforcement system in some very narrow niches to enforce safety before we have loss of life. And the areas, you know, that we're looking at around the state certainly are to enforce overweight loads in posted areas, and to enforce speed in traffic, in construction zones when workers are present. So that's the niche that we think these tools could actually be used for, to make our roads safer, which certainly I think is one of my responsibilities as the director of YDOT. I could go into some details on those areas, but I don't think I will based on time. If we have some questions there, you can certainly ask me. I think maybe what I'd share is, one of the best examples of overweight systems and posted areas in our state is Teton Pass. 10% slope and chronic disregard for rules, and the ability for us to help control that would be a very important measure for us across the state or in that area. When you talk to my maintainers and when you talk to the construction teams who work in our construction zones, oftentimes you say the only thing between them and an 80,000 pound truck is some yellow cones. And certainly our interest is ensuring that those vehicles slow down to the posted speed limit. We know they do when there's a trooper present. However, there's not enough troopers to be everywhere all the time. And so that's why we see the potential use of an automatic traffic enforcement as a key important tool. Just a comment on how the system works, because I would like to turn a little bit of time to Colonel Haller to talk about due process. But the systems that YDOT has been looking at in concert with those two narrow niches that I talked about do not take a picture of every vehicle that goes by. They are not constantly monitoring what's going on around them. What they do is, if there's a violation that triggers an event, they snap a picture, and that starts the process. And as Colonel Haller will talk to, the due process in the case of the citation and the violation is exactly the same as if a trooper had actually been there. Like everybody else, I am not interested in a system that records everything, but I am interested in a system that maintains safety in specific areas of our transportation system, and having the right suite of tools to maintain safety on our roads. With that, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I'll pass the mic to Colonel Haller, and then perhaps YDOT could stand in all for questions.
Thank you, Director. Yes, Colonel Haller, do you have a few statements to make?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Kevin Haller with the Highway Patrol. So I would first like to address due process. Whenever, let's just take example, what happens today. There's a speeding violator, a Highway Patrol trooper identifies the violator, that is recorded with technology, a radar gun. Also, there is a dash mounted camera, and that is all utilized as evidence. The trooper goes up, identifies the violator, returns to the vehicle with the violator's identification, runs the violator to see if there's any outstanding warrants, other concerns or issues. And then let's say he or she actually issues a citation to that violator. Upon that citation is the court of that jurisdiction, the date of that court, as well as the violation that particular individual has been cited for. So that's the due process. The violator does not want to pay that citation and wants to contest it. They certainly have the right to do that. And so they would coordinate with the prosecutor's office and that respective court to proceed as such. Whenever we talk about the automated vehicle identification, as Director Ryder indicated, violators would be captured by this system. And at that point in time, the information would be provided to a trooper or troopers at the Highway Patrol. And the evidence would be reviewed. At that point, the violation would be corroborated, and the individual, if they are issued a citation, the same information on that citation would be as what I just described. There is due process. It is exactly the same process that is in place today, and they could contest that citation. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I would stand for any questions.
Representative Stiver.
Chairman, Colonel Haller. So, and I've got some experience with these cameras when I was stationed in Germany. How do you identify the driver? You're just identifying the vehicle owner.
Colonel?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Stiver, there are occasions where that does happen. There are attempts made for a photograph of the driver of the vehicle and the vehicle, meaning the license plate of the vehicle. If the driver cannot be identified, then that is correct. Senate File 3 and many other states issue that citation to the registered owner of that vehicle. So as an example, let's say it's not the driver driving, and it was in fact a family member or a friend that had legal right to drive that vehicle at that time. That citation would be issued, but it is to the registered owner, but it is not as a moving violation. So it does not go against that driving record. And then at that point in time, that driver then would have either a civil matter or more likely a friendly matter to take up with the individual that they loan their vehicle to.
Follow up, Representative Stiver.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Let's say, well, it did happen Monday on Highway 85. My vehicle, my truck was pulled over to an 84 and a 65 by one of your troopers. And my son got a $155 ticket. And I want to thank the trooper. I think having a trooper there is more effective. I know you can't be everywhere, but it's more effective for them to learn. Just getting something in the mail and you pay it and go, pay it and go. I think it's more effective to have them little lights behind you. And again, I want to thank your trooper for doing her job.
Thank you, Representative. Any other questions for the department? Representative Burt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, gentlemen from the agency. I do appreciate you guys' time here. Director Reiner, you did mention that we can use a hammer to hit a nail or hit somebody on the head. And obviously, we're not going to advocate that. I get the intent of what you were saying. We use the right tool for the right job. Would an automated camera be the right tool, or would a law enforcement officer be the right tool? Studies have shown, as Representative Andrew had mentioned, that more and more unsafe driving habits occur around the automated intersections because of shorter light times or someone trying to get through that light. So those habits can be unsafe. I can tell you personally, I've never tried to run a red light with a law enforcement officer sitting there. My question here is, I've talked to a number of law enforcement officers that would say that installing automated cameras in intersections or along the line would actually increase their workload. This would come from photo blocking technology, whether it's an infrared light, either in the vehicle or even a photo blocking type license plate blocker that would prevent from the camera itself being able to identify either the driver or the light. There are concerns that the workload on officers would actually increase. Do you guys have any history or any data that would actually say installing traffic camera, these automated cameras would actually increase or decrease the workload of law enforcement officers across the state? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Colonel Haller.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Burt, yes, in response to your question, we have considered that. Whenever we're talking specifically about, let's say, trailer restrictions and weight limits, it is my belief that initially upon such an automated enforcement system, that we would identify a higher number of violators than would be identified down the road. And what I mean is Wyoming would be sending a message that this particular route is dangerous for vehicles that are over 60,000 pounds, as history has proven, as well as during seasons with trailer restrictions. Now, you are correct. I do believe that it is a different type of work amongst a trooper that I would probably assign from headquarters, because that's who would be reviewing the information and then issuing the citation. However, that is a benefit to the traveling public and the safety of those on those routes at the end of the day, and those troopers who are unable to fully enforce those areas because they are involved in other parts of their responsibility, investigating crashes and other duties performed. So I do believe it's a balance, but it is a balance that I'm confident that that can be managed.
Thank you, Colonel. I think most of our questions are answered. I'll take someone from here in the room. Mr. Winnie, please come on up.
Mr. Chairman, Bill Winnie, Sublette County. Sadly, I was not born in Wyoming. Such is life. I grew up in Arlington, Virginia, Northern Virginia. I still have a piece of property back there, so I go back periodically. Northern Virginia set up a series of traffic light cameras, and after a while, they were challenged in court, and a judge ruled they couldn't be used to enforce a ticket or whatever. That was circa 2006 that I was aware of. I'm not sure of the current status of it, but it would be something worth taking a look at. You had some questions in that vein. Subject to your questions, thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Winnie? Question? Mr. Winnie? Oh, Representative Brown.
How many of these devices do you guys have over in Sublette County?
We don't even have a stoplight. So we wouldn't have stoplight cameras, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Winnie. Okay. Amanda, who do we have in the waiting room with their hand up?
Mr. Chairman, we have Miss Sheila Forsch with Wyoming Trucking Association in the room.
Okay, please admit Sheila. Sheila, nice to see you here again.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sheila Forsch with the Wyoming Trucking Association. Excuse me. I just want to play off of a few comments that have been made and to say that we've really not taken a position on what's been talked about as far as red light cameras, that type of automated device. Very specifically, the director and the colonel have talked about an issue on a pass in the western part of the state. That is a problem with overweight trucks, something we certainly don't condone, something we would wish wouldn't happen. And we're concerned that this broad prohibition would have a chilling effect on being able to enact some safety procedures on that pass that may save a life, and certainly is an alternative that we would prefer other than banning commercial vehicle traffic on Teton Pass. That type of automated device is tied into a weigh in motion scale that's already in the highway system. They're weighing those trucks, and they're also checking to make sure that when the trailer restriction is in place, that there are no trailers allowed, whether that's a commercial vehicle or a passenger vehicle pulling a trailer. So a prohibition that's as broad as the one contained in the bill that you're considering today has some concerns for us as far as limiting an automated device that might have a huge safety implication for very specific portions of state highways. We don't support it being used broadly. We prefer language that is very, very specific to posted restricted areas right now. If there's a problem area, we do support the use of some type of additional system to help with enforcement.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Forsch? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone, excuse me, anyone else in the room wish to speak? Mr. Odekoven, please.
Get my light to turn on, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I was waiting for the green light to light. Thank you, Byron Odekoven, the Executive Director for the Wyoming Sheriffs and Chiefs And thank you for allowing me a moment to clarify some comments. When I shot a short message to the sponsor of the bill this morning saying we would oppose part of the bill, I planned on being here to clarify what that was meant to be. So let me do just that and then offer support for the rest, if you will. So from a law enforcement position, we know that one of the troubling issues facing the community perception with law enforcement in other states has to do with automated red light or speed cameras that are generally used by a local municipality in some flavor or perceived flavor of revenue enhancement rather than highway safety. So from a revenue enhancement perspective, no, not a big fan of red light or speed cameras. And they're generally run by a private company. A private company is under contract with the municipality, takes a large percentage of the fine as a revenue generation for that company as well. So from that perspective, Mr. Chairman, no, would not support red light or traffic cameras used in that vein. Now let's change slightly to what the YDOT has mentioned, has been briefly talked about with the committee, and that's all the rest of the facets around automation run by a state agency or run by a local government in and of themselves, or manned by an officer or group of officers, if you will. That, on the other hand, we would support. So this bill looks to outlaw those types of activities. So from that perspective, we would oppose. It's important that we look at the underlying effect to some of these, or the chilling effect. And I think we mentioned the interstate compact as one. And that would be very troubling because our information going outgo and ingo is reliant on that interstate compact. If we are in violation of that interstate compact, we may not receive that inflow from those other states as well. And that would be near and dear to our officers and our officers' safety to be able to receive that information for a host of reasons, and would hope that this would not have a chilling effect on that relationship to receive that registration and driver's license and insurance information from those other states. In terms of future automation, I'm unaware of any community in Wyoming that's utilizing what I earlier described as that for-profiteer red light or traffic camera to record traffic devices or send out any citations. So I'm unaware that that would be an issue in Wyoming per se, and don't anticipate anybody doing it. Now I am, as we mentioned, the Interstate Compact, Wyoming takes the tact, if you will, that we must cite the driver of a vehicle, and that's driver must receive that citation. South Dakota, that's not the case. South Dakota is an example. The owner of the vehicle is responsible for the actions of that vehicle, because as was described by Representative McGuire, it's a privilege to operate on the road, extended to the owner of the vehicle, and in turn extended to people that the owner grants permission to do. So that's the tack that other states take, but Wyoming has taken it that it would be the driver who receives the citation. So our relationship in the interstate compact world to some of those other states is also based on their law and how it is perceived back and forth to receive those citations and to receive that information. So this may have some troubling aspects. So respectfully, I would say that the bill is may have some chilling effect on several pieces of highway safety that we may want to take some additional time. If I thought the goal was to talk about that for-profiteer, if you will, red light or stop sign or stoplight kind of activity, this goes far beyond that, and we may want to take a very close look at that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Oakhoven? Any questions? Okay, thank you. Representative Stiver. Okay. All right, thank you. Amanda, anyone else in the waiting room?
Mr. Chairman, Sean Dow is in the webinar at this point.
All right, please admit him.
Hi, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if you can hear me, but my name is Sean.
We
Thank
can hear you, but we cannot see you.
Yeah, I don't, I'm trying to hit share with the video, but and hitting okay. It's just not working for some reason.
Well,
but we'll continue.
So please continue.
Yes, since 2008, it has been my mission and duty and I'm proud to tell you that a successful mission to get these cameras banned all across the country. First, let me assure you and alleviate any of your concerns. This is model legislation that was signed most recently by Texas Governor Greg Abbott, banning the cameras completely in the state of Texas. And I assure you that they're still able to collect their toll roads. This has nothing to do with that. That is a completely and separate action. And you'll still be able to do that if you guys want to have these toll roads. And then to give you the warnings and the pitfalls of what other states have done and hasn't been brought up here yet is the lawsuits and the ramifications that you would be opening yourselves up to in the state of Wyoming if you were to allow any of these automated traffic cameras installed. And I've heard a lot of these organizations talking about the exact programs in other states, and they have been sued, like the state of Wisconsin, which had to issue refunds to every single ticket that they issued because these cameras are unconstitutional. And I want to warn you about the people that you're doing business with. The two largest companies which just merged, their president was just sentenced to 5 years in prison for corruption, bribery, and fraud. They lie and tell you it's about safety when in fact, shining a bright flash in a driver's face is never going to increase safety. It is going to increase accidents. And that's what we see with studies all across. And I assure you, Mr. Chairman, that you and your entire board your entire dais will receive multiple studies from Texas Department of State and the Department of Transportation in Texas and in Virginia and New York, which show that these cameras increase accidents. They're unconstitutional. They've been declared unconstitutional in multiple states. I'll send you all those unconstitutional. While there has not been a U.S. Supreme Court, there have been dozens of state Supreme Courts that have ruled these cameras unconstitutional. So I'm very proud that Wyoming is standing up and protecting its residents from these unconstitutional cameras. Your interstate compacts are completely safe because all of those have a clause that say that the contracts must be constitutional. And since these cameras are unconstitutional, you're all perfectly safe in sharing that data and information. The information you're actually protecting is Wyoming residents from these private foreign predatory companies who egregiously violate people's constitutional rights. And with that, sir, I'll be happy to stand for any questions for you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What kind of dog is that?
I'm sorry, my German Shepherd's going crazy because there's a delivery man outside.
That's fine. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Dahl, very much. Okay, anyone else in the room who wished to speak on this bill? Okay, Amanda, anyone else in the waiting room?
Mr. Chairman, I just let in Miss Kathy Hyde.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Ide, are you with us? We have no video of you.
Okay, there.
Okay, there we go. Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you and see you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to voice my support for House Bill 186 today. These automated ticketing machines are sold to the legislatures as a way to reduce collisions or moving violations. But just as Representative Andrew and Sean Dabo stated, nothing could be further from the truth. Multiple studies from across the country have shown an increase of accidents of driving conditions on roads and freeways are made more dangerous by interrupting the free flow of traffic as people respond to the presence of these cameras. The same goes at red light cameras intersections where drivers slam on their brakes to avoid tickets. Many cities have been found guilty of corruption, with some of these schemes involving city officials accepting hundreds of thousands of dollars in bribes from automated ticketing machine corporations. The corruption has been found to be rampant with these vendors, which is part of the reason that 18 states have banned these automated traffic machines. But of particular importance to me, though, is the unconstitutional recording of Americans' movements. These high-speed cameras capture photographs of every passing license plate with software that analyzes those photographs to identify the license plate number. These systems then typically check each plate number against hot lists of plates that instantly alert law enforcement. The problem is that these systems are configured to store the photograph, the license plate number, and the date, time, and location where all vehicles are seen, not just the data of the vehicles that are of interest to law enforcement. This data can be permanently retained in a database and shared widely with fusion centers and private companies with few or no restrictions on how it can be used. It's quite evident that automated ticketing machines and their constant monitoring and recording pose serious privacy and civil liberty threats. The vast quantities of data collected on innocent people is just wrong. Ordinary people going about their daily lives have every right to expect that their movements will not be logged into massive government databases. The federal government has fueled the spread of automated traffic enforcement systems among state and local law enforcement agencies. The Wall Street Journal, in a past report, stated that the Department of Homeland Security has distributed over $50 million in grants to fund the acquisitions of these license plate readers. On top of that, a company called ELSAG, E-L-S-A-G, it's a license plate reader manufacturing company. They state on their website that the Department of Homeland Security has distributed billions of dollars in grants through the Homeland Security Grant Program. To sum it up, these automated traffic enforcement systems violate our natural rights that are outlined and protected by the Bill of Rights, in particular the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 14th Amendments. It would be unconscionable to disregard the privacy of Wyoming citizens by implementing these cameras in our state. As a side note, I would like to draw to your attention to the diverse group of co-sponsors. You have both Republicans and Democrats supporting this bill. Lastly, the most important point I would like to make on this is the unique characteristic of America is its foundation that's based upon defending our people's lives, liberty, and property. House Bill 186 certainly fits into that category. I ask that you would vote in favor of this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Ide. Any questions? Questions? Okay, committee. Thank you very much. Amanda, anyone else in the waiting room?
Mr. Chairman, we do have the phone call, the call-in. I just allowed them to talk.
Okay,
I
thank
don't
you.
believe we'll get any video.
Okay, thank you. And you can move Ms. Ide back to the waiting room. And so who do we have on the telephone? Anyone on the telephone? One last chance.
If they can unmute themselves.
Okay, anyone on the telephone? Because we're going to have to move on. Okay, with that, Amanda, anyone else out there in the waiting room?
Mr. Chairman, that is it with their hand raised.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else in the room wish to speak on this bill? Okay, with that, I will close public testimony. Committee? Okay, moved by Stiver, seconded by Burt. Might be one we can, I think we have the time, we can work in more of a traditional manner. Anything on page 1? Okay, page 2. And Representative Andrew, you're welcome to just stay there and as we work through this, please. Page 3.
Mr. Chairman, Representative
Brown?
on page 3, I'm going to motion this, and if it goes down, that's fine. Based on the testimony that was given to us from Representative Andrew versus what's actually in statute, I believe there's a difference between intent and what's written. And so I would move to strike page 3, line 9, starting at without requiring a law, and then down to line 10 and through line 11 at the word violation.
Okay. Seconded by Henderson. All right, so let me repeat that. Your intent is to strike line 9, starting with the word without, through line 11, ending by striking the word violation.
Correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and so Representative, would you explain your amendment, please?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. In testimony, it was stated that that you can, other states may have the opportunity to have an officer present, but not at the actual scene. So it was testimony, from what I remember, it was testimony that these people could have an officer watching and write a ticket based on a recording from the video. However, the current proposed statute as written says without requiring a law enforcement to be present to witness the violation. The term "to be present" is actually what concerns me on that. And one of two ways, either we strike the "to be present" or the entire thing here to get in correct terminology with what was testified to, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Other discussion on the proposed amendment? Any other discussion? I guess not.
Question?
Question having been called. All those in favor of the amendment, and I will repeat it again, to strike starting on line 9 with the word without, proceeding to line 11 and striking and ending with violation. Diana, do you have that? Okay, I just want to make sure. Okay, all right. Question having been called. All in favor, please also raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Representative Burt, was that an aye or an opposed? Okay, all right, that I believe that amendment carries. Okay. Anything else on page 3?
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Brown.
Mr. Chairman, if I can ask another quick question to Representative
Please.
Andrew regarding lines 21 and 22, and actually it's even 20, it says pursuant to any existing interstate compact or contract entered into before July 1, 2021, when presumably this bill would go into effect, if that compact or contract does not specifically allow or require information to be shared. So Representative Andrew, I think what you're trying to say there is if we don't have the language in the contract or the compact, that those, even if it's inferred, you are saying that we would stop the Department of Transportation and or anybody who has that information would then cease because it is not specifically outlined. So this would require the Department of Transportation to go through and review all those contracts. Is that right?
Representative Andrew.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Brown, if that's what it takes to find out what is in those compacts, if we don't already know whether or not that is in there, I assume they would have to do that.
Mr. Chairman,
Representative Brown.
It would actually go into page 4. Then I think there should probably be a section 4 and then moving section 5. And maybe we bring this as a committee of the whole if this bill passes. Something has got to be done to enforce those contracts, because at this point, I don't know, with all the compacts and contracts that are out there, I'm not certain that the Department of Transportation would have an understanding that whether or not this is understood. And I think they would have to go back through, and not only that, I think the Attorney General's office would need to go back through and look at all those contracts as well to verify that we're not releasing something that's not specifically outlined in a contract or a compact. If it doesn't get brought here, we don't have the language, and I don't think we have the time to do it right here. But I certainly believe that either myself or Representative Andrew needs to bring something like that.
Yeah, I would recommend Representative Andrew that you craft that yourself and work with Representative Brown to do that. Okay. So anything on page 4?
Mr. Chairman,
Representative Obermuller.
back to page 3, sir.
That's fine.
Thank you. The amendment we just passed, has the potential of having made this more restrictive than before. The way I read the original language was that if there was a law enforcement officer present, that it was okay to use these things. But now we're saying it's not okay to use these things under any circumstances, even if a law enforcement officer is there. Am I misinterpreting what the new language says, Mr. Chairman?
Thank you. Thank you, Representative. Give us a moment to read that if you would, please. I think Representative Obermuller might be right, and I'm having trouble. Representative Brown, please.
I
propose the amendment.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm not convinced, because if you read the entire definition, it clearly states a speed camera or other device used to detect violation of a state's traffic law under Title 31 of Wyoming statutes, which results in a notice of violation being delivered to the registered owner of a vehicle. That's all we're really saying. Striking without requiring a law enforcement officer to be present to witness the violation. I'm not certain that it broadens or narrows the statute. I think the language that was inserted in there without requiring a law enforcement officer actually narrows the scope. It basically says, the way I read this, and I'm not a lawyer, I just stayed at a Holiday Inn last night, but it just says that the device is used to detect the violation of any laws that Wyoming has without requiring a law enforcement officer to be present. And that to be present, I think, is the critical component of that portion that we struck. We could certainly add this back in there and just strike to be present, but I still don't think that fixes anything. So it might be something that Representative Obermuller and I need to talk with LSO about, because I'm not so certain.
Okay, Representative Obermuller.
Yeah, I think we need to talk it out further, Mr. Chairman, because I think that it creates an exception. The way it reads to me, it creates an exception where if the law enforcement officer is there as a witness, then it's okay. So to me, it reads as an exception to disallowing these kinds of systems. So I guess we need to work out this language. Mr. Chairman, to me, it would be better language to say without requiring a law enforcement officer to process the violation is probably better language, so that you actually have a person that has to come as a witness to the violation, and you're not just dealing with the automated system.
Committee, any other opinions on this? Okay, I don't see any. So Representative Brown, Obermuller, do you want to put that back in and then the two of you will work with LSO on it? Or do you want to leave the amendment in place and still work with LSO on it?
Mr. Chairman, that would be my preference, is to leave it in as it is. Once we have the draft amendment to LSO and LSO has sent it over to you for final approval and whatnot, I can go speak with Heather Jarvis and get her legal opinion on it.
Okay, and take Representative Obermuller
Certainly.
with you, please. Representative Obermuller, does that sit okay with you? You can always bring an amendment to put it back in or to put different language in.
Or Mr. Chairman, we could also just say to vote no against the standing committee amendment when it comes through, once we have definitive.
You can do that also. Well, it is a standing committee amendment. You'd have to vote against it and bring others. Or
That sounds good, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, all right. Okay, I guess I would just add any other amendments. I think we worked through the bill. Okay, no other amendments? Committee?
Discussion.
Question being called.
Discussion.
Oh, more discussion? Representative McGuire.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the big question here, and again, the problem is when people bring in model legislation from out of state. Has anybody here ever received a moving traffic violation in the state of Wyoming from an automated traffic enforcement system?
Okay. Representative Henderson is raising his hand.
Where? In Wyoming. In Wyoming.
Okay.
And the reason being is if you go to Title 16, one of the foundations of our traffic enforcement system is that the law enforcement officer has to be present and he has to identify the individual who violated the law. And everybody's saying, well, what about the cameras on the school buses? That's a civil fine. And it was a very specific and very well-defined difference. The civil fine, if you violate a stop sign on a school bus, that is a civil, not a criminal fine. Right now in the state of Wyoming, we cannot issue a criminal citation unless an officer is present. So all of this is moot. If, for example, the discussion that YDOT had, where they might want to have automated traffic enforcement or construction zones or something, that will require specific legislation. It will have to be specific to that instance, and there will have to be a change in Title 16. So, you can bring this based on model legislation from other states, but it doesn't have anything to do with the state of Wyoming. And, it's one of those things where it just, it's kind of, well, I would just say all it will do will be to muddy the waters in the future. If there was going to be a specific change to the statutes, it would have to go through the entire legislative process, and it would have to be specific to that individual. And so far, the state of Wyoming, because it's been brought up before, traffic stoplights and things like that, it has been argued and gone through the process, and it's always been soundly rejected. So I would encourage a no vote on this particular piece of legislation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just have some comments also. I do think that the discussion is very relevant because we have a Senate file that's pending on the other side of the chamber right now that absolutely discusses this issue. I think it's important. I've reached out to my constituents, asked them their opinion on this bill and this issue, and clearly they're in support of the idea of restricting the state. So on and in support of the bill. Thank you.
Other comments? Representative Obermuller?
On and against the bill, and appreciate the comments for Representative McGuire on these issues. And just wanted to emphasize the lack of vetting of the safety issue part of this. Those are issues that are kind of ongoing and dealing with how we solve these issues, like on Teton County. So further restrictions in this area is just not where we should be at this moment, sir. So thank you.
Great. Any Representative Henderson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to vote no because I don't think this is well developed. It's not ripe. I agree with the comment about the concerns of applicability, but we have a rural state and a rural environment, and we have a really strained fiscal situation impacting our communities across the state. So for those reasons, I'm going to vote no.
All right, thank you, Representative. Okay, any other comments? Committee? Okay, question having been called. Diana, would you take the roll, please?
Representative Baker.
Aye.
Representative Brown has submitted an absentee ballot of aye.
Okay.
Representative Burt.
Aye.
Representative Henderson.
No.
Representative McGuire.
No.
Representative Obermueller.
No.
Representative O'Hearn.
No.
Representative Stivar.
Aye.
Chairman Burkhart.
No. So.
I have 5 noes, 3 ayes, and 1 absentee,
Thank you.
or actually, well. his-
Proxy.
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Diana. So Representative, I think it's something that you should continue to work on. I think you've heard the questions and the concern of the committee. I think if you work those through, bring this back, gives you time to work it in the interim and see what happens with the Senate file addressing the same issue and that. And I would say, talk to the members of the committee. I think any one of us would be glad to work with you on it. And that, thank you for your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
With that,